I'd been married to Paul for 27 years, and for 26 of them, I would have told you we were happy. Or, at least content. Isn't that the goal, after all? To settle into something that doesn't hurt, that doesn't thrill too much, that just holds? We had our routines: Sunday pancakes, Friday grocery runs, long walks that weren't really about the walking. We had silence, too, not the angry kind, but the kind that sinks into the walls of a house when people have long since run out of things to say. I used to find comfort in that kind of quiet. Now, I'm not so sure. The funny thing is, I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't prowling around on apps, or slipping off my wedding ring in coffee shops. I wasn't lonely in the way that makes you ache. I was just understimulated, softened around the edges, like an old photograph. And then Jamie came back. Technically, he's my stepbrother, though I never thought of him like that growing up. Our parents married when I was 29 and he was 24. I'd already left home, married Paul, and moved 3 hours up the coast. Jamie was the wild child in his 20s, constantly changing cities, girlfriends, and haircuts. I saw him only at Christmas, occasionally Easter, and once at a chaotic family reunion where he got drunk and tried to start a poker game with my teenage nephews. And then, about 3 months ago, my stepmother fell and broke her hip. Jamie came to help take care of her. Paul and I lived the closest, so Jamie ended up staying in our guest room. It was supposed to be for 2 weeks. He stayed for 4. He arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, hauling a duffel bag, grinning like he hadn't aged a day past 30. I was startled by how good he looked. Not handsome in the clean-cut way Paul had once been, but roguish, lean, tanned, with a streak of silver in his otherwise black hair that somehow made him look more dangerous than older. He wore a faded t-shirt that clung just a bit too well to a body that shouldn't have been that toned at 48. "Hey, beautiful," he said, pulling me into a hug that lingered just a moment too long. I laughed it off, called him incorrigible, and brushed off the way his hand had pressed flat against the small of my back. The first few days were uneventful. He spent mornings at the rehab center, afternoons running errands for his mom, and evenings on our back patio with a beer. Paul barely noticed him. He was still working full-time and came home late, falling asleep in his recliner most nights. Jamie noticed everything. "You still do that thing with your lip when you're concentrating," he said casually one night as I was prepping vegetables at the counter. "Used to drive me nuts." I looked up. "I didn't know you paid that much attention." "Oh, I always noticed you," he said, his voice low. "Even when I wasn't supposed to." I gave him a look, the kind meant to chastise but softened with a smile. "Don't flirt with your stepsister. It's unseemly." He smirked. "We didn't grow up together. And you're not really my sister." His words sat in the air like mist, thin, but impossible to ignore. I told myself it was nothing. Jamie was like that. A bit too charming, a bit too loose with his compliments. He probably flirted with baristas, dog walkers, and the woman at the DMV. It didn't mean anything. Except, I liked it. I liked how he looked at me, like I was still someone to be seen. Not just glanced at in passing while deciding what kind of cereal to buy, but seen. His eyes lingered when I bent over to pick something up. His gaze was steady when we talked. He made me feel like I was 30 again. No, not just 30, wanted. It had been a long time since anyone made me feel that way. The first real shift happened one late evening, when Paul had gone to bed early, with a headache. Jamie and I were alone on the patio, nursing glasses of red wine and watching the moon rise over the backyard. We'd slipped into one of those conversations that feels effortless, like we were both floating downstream with the current. He told me about his last relationship, which had ended badly, some woman named Ava who'd moved to Vancouver. I told him about Paul's recent obsession with heart-healthy diets, how he'd replaced all our butter with avocado spread and insisted on fish 3 times a week. "Sounds thrilling," Jamie said dryly. "You're one to talk," I replied, elbowing him. "You used to eat peanut butter straight from the jar." "I still do," he said. "Some things never change." We laughed. And then his hand brushed mine. It was subtle, could have been an accident. But it lingered. And when I didn't move away, neither did he. He turned his palm upward, gently catching my fingers in his. I felt my breath catch. "Jamie, I know, he said. I shouldn't. But I want to. I looked at him then. Really looked. His face was serious, but not tense. His eyes searched mine for a flicker of invitation. And against all common sense, I gave it. We kissed right there on the patio, slow and warm, tasting of wine and something older, something remembered. My body responded before my mind could catch up. My skin prickled, my lips parted, my breath quickened. When we pulled apart, I felt dizzy. This can't happen, I said. I know, he replied. But it did. It started with a single kiss. Then another, pressed against the kitchen wall the next night while Paul showered upstairs. Then hands, mouths, whispers in the dark when the house was sleeping. Jamie was careful, almost reverent. He never rushed me, never pushed too far, too fast. But I wanted more. God help me, I wanted it all. It was like waking up after a long sleep. My body remembered things I'd forgotten. How to ache, how to crave, how to beg. Jamie was tender and rough in equal measure, funny and filthy and insatiable. He worshipped my body like it was something holy, like he'd been waiting his whole life to touch me. The first time we had sex, it was in my laundry room. The machine had just finished its cycle. I was pulling out warm towels when he slipped in behind me, his hands on my hips, his mouth against my neck. I moaned, soft, desperate, and leaned back into him. He turned me around, lifted me onto the dryer, and pushed my skirt up around my waist. I wasn't wearing panties. I hadn't been able to all week, knowing how often he liked to slide a hand up my thigh under the dinner table. His fingers found me instantly, slick and ready. God, you're soaked, he growled, his voice gravel against my throat. You've been thinking about this, haven't you? I nodded, speechless. Tell me, he demanded, sliding 2 fingers inside me with agonizing slowness. Tell me how bad you want it. Jamie, please. He didn't make me wait much longer. He unzipped his jeans, freed himself, and slid into me with a groan that melted my spine. It was quick, raw, and nearly silent, save for the soft slap of skin and the low, broken sounds I couldn't stop making. I bit down on his shoulder to keep from screaming when I came, shaking around him like something possessed. After, we clung to each other, both panting, both trembling. Neither of us said a word. That night, I lay beside my husband and stared at the ceiling, my body still humming with aftershocks. I should have felt guilt. I should have wept. But all I felt was alive. That week blurred. I moved through the house like a woman in 2 skins, one that smiled, folded laundry, and asked Paul about his day, and another that burned from within, waiting for the next stolen moment. Jamie knew how to find me. A brush of fingers when no one was looking. A whispered, "Meet me in 5," as he passed behind me in the hallway. He was shameless. And I was worse. I became an accomplice in my own undoing. We christened nearly every room of the house. The guest room, the garage, even the little alcove by the pantry. Each time riskier, bolder, as though the danger made it taste sweeter. Once, while Paul was on a conference call in the next room, Jamie bent me over the bathroom counter and made me bite down on a towel to keep from screaming. It was madness. I knew it, but I didn't want to stop. We were reckless with our bodies, but careful with our words. We never talked about what it meant or what would come next. We didn't ask questions like, "Do you love me?" or "What are we doing?" because we both knew we couldn't afford answers. Still, something shifted in me. It wasn't just the sex, though God, the sex was like nothing I'd had in years. It was the way Jamie looked at me afterward. Not like I was someone's wife. Not like I was an obligation. He looked at me like I was a woman. Flesh and heat and hunger. I had forgotten how that felt. One night, after we'd made love in the dark of the guest room, our clothes scattered like secrets on the floor, I stayed curled against him longer than I meant to. His fingers traced idle circles on my back. "You always this quiet afterward?" he asked. "I'm trying not to think." "About Paul?" I hesitated. "About everything." Jamie rolled onto his side, propping his head on one arm. "You know this doesn't have to be a secret forever." I blinked. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," he replied slowly, "if you wanted to leave him, I wouldn't let you do it alone." My breath caught. That was the first time he'd said anything that even hinted at something more. At a future. Until then, we'd kept it physical, emotional, yes, but unspoken. I pulled away slightly, needing space to think. Jamie, I haven't let myself go there. I mean, God, we're talking about burning down a 30-year marriage. Are you happy in it? I don't know. I was. Maybe. Or maybe I just convinced myself I was. You don't act like someone happy, he said, voice soft but firm. You act like someone starving. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He wasn't wrong. Jamie left the next morning for a weekend trip back to his apartment 2 hours south to check mail and grab some tools for a project his mother had asked him to do. Paul and I had the house to ourselves, and it felt hollow. I watched him eat toast and skim the newspaper and wondered how I'd never noticed how robotic we'd become. He asked if I wanted to go to the farmer's market, and I said yes, out of habit, not desire. We walked side by side, but we didn't touch. I used to crave his hand in mine. Now it felt like holding a stranger's. At one stall, he pointed to a bundle of fresh lavender and said, "Didn't you used to love this smell?" I blinked. I hadn't thought about lavender in years. I still do, I said. But you stopped buying it. I didn't know it mattered. Neither of us spoke after that for a long while. Jamie returned Sunday night, and when he hugged me hello, my whole body sighed inwardly. Like I'd been holding my breath. That week, everything intensified. He started writing me notes. Little scraps of torn notebook paper slipped into my purse or left on my pillow when I was in the shower. You make me forget every woman I've ever touched. I think about you when I close my eyes. And when I open them. What would you do if I kissed you in front of him? The notes were dangerous. Exhilarating. I hid them between pages of cookbooks I hadn't opened in years. One afternoon, we were in the garage, pretending to be organizing storage bins while Paul mowed the front lawn. Jamie pulled me against the workbench, hiked up my dress, and slid inside me in one hard thrust. I bit down on his shoulder, barely able to breathe. When we finished, I pulled away, trying to fix my hair, shaking. Jesus, I whispered. We're going to get caught. Maybe I want to, he said. My eyes snapped to his. Don't say that. Why not? Because it's not just a game anymore. He looked at me, quiet. I know. That night, Paul kissed my cheek and thanked me for making stew. He said he appreciated how I'd held everything together while his schedule had been so crazy. He squeezed my hand and called me his rock. I excused myself to the bathroom and stared at my reflection until the tears stopped trying to come. The guilt wasn't sharp. It was dull and lingering, like a bruise that wouldn't fade. I didn't want to hurt Paul. I never did. But somewhere along the way, I had stopped loving him the way a wife should. Maybe long before Jamie ever walked back into our house. Maybe that was the real betrayal, that I'd stayed silent for so long. The next morning, while Paul was out for a jog, Jamie and I sat on the back porch with our coffee. The early sun cast soft gold over everything. He reached for my hand. Come away with me, he said. I blinked. What? Just for a weekend? No secrets, no pretending. Just us. Somewhere quiet. I laughed, a little bitter. I'm a married woman, Jamie. You're also a woman who hasn't been happy in a long time. He wasn't wrong. And I hated that he wasn't wrong. I don't know if I'm brave enough. He leaned in, brushing his lips against my temple. I'll be brave for both of us. Later that night, I lay in bed beside Paul, staring at the ceiling, heart hammering. The space between our bodies felt infinite. I turned toward him, watched the way his chest rose and fell. Watched the face I'd once fallen in love with, now softened by years and shadows. I'm going to visit my sister next weekend, I said suddenly. Just for a couple of days. Paul didn't even open his eyes. That's nice. Tell her I said hi. Just like that, I was free. At least for 2 days. I didn't sleep at all that night. I imagined what it would be like to be alone with Jamie in a place where we didn't have to whisper. Where my skin could be bare in the daylight. Where I could taste him without fear. I imagined the look in his eyes when I said yes. The motel was nothing special. Just a 2-star place off a quiet road near a lake, where the sheets were clean but the curtains hadn't been changed since the early 90s. Still, when Jamie unlocked the door and stepped aside to let me in, it felt like entering another country. One where my name wasn't Diane Marshall, wife of a financial advisor, mother of 2 grown sons. In that room, I was someone else entirely. Someone I barely recognized anymore, but missed all the same. Jamie set our overnight bags down and shut the door behind us. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Neither did I. The air between us shimmered like summer heat. He came toward me slowly and stopped just inches away. "No husband," he murmured. "No clocks," I added. "No pretending." That last part made something flutter in my chest. I nodded. He reached out and slid his fingers into my hair. "Take your dress off." I obeyed. There was no rush in how he touched me that night. No fear of being overheard.
No stolent moments.
He took his time, undressing me like a man savoring every inch he uncovered. His hands moved with that quiet confidence I'd come to crave. Nothing showy or aggressive, just the kind of sureness that made me feel seen, chosen, even worshipped. We made love with the lights on. That hadn't happened in years. Jamie kissed every part of me like he'd memorized it. My breasts, my stomach, the curve of my hip. His mouth lingered until I trembled. I gasped when he finally entered me, not from pain or shock, but from the sheer rightness of it. It was slow and deep, the kind of lovemaking that rewrites your cells. He looked at me the whole time, holding my gaze like he was anchoring us both. It wasn't just about sex anymore. It hadn't been for a while. This was the moment I stopped lying to myself about it. Afterward, we lay tangled together, my head on his chest, our legs draped messily over each other. The motel air conditioner rattled softly, but otherwise, the room was silent. He ran a hand up and down my spine. "You okay?" I nodded against him. "Better than okay." "I could stay like this forever," he said. I knew he meant it, and that terrified me, because I was beginning to want that too. We stayed the entire weekend, walked by the lake, had greasy diner breakfasts, drank cheap red wine in bed. I laughed more in those 2 days than I had in the past 2 years. I didn't have to perform with Jamie. I didn't have to filter myself. On the second morning, I woke up to him watching me. "You're beautiful when you sleep," he said. I rolled my eyes. "Don't start with the flattery. We already had sex 4 times. He grinned. 5, if you count what we did in the shower. I laughed, but then something caught in my throat. The truth of what we were doing, of what I was risking. "Jamie." He sat up, sensing the shift. "What is it?" I looked down at the sheet clutched in my hands. "This feels like a dream. And I don't know what happens when I go home." He was quiet. "What do you want to happen?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "I keep thinking if I can just compartmentalize it, put it in a box, it won't touch the rest of my life. But it already has. I can't look at Paul without hearing your voice in my head." Jamie reached over and took my hand. "You don't have to decide everything right now. But I need to know if this is just a fling for you. Because it's not for me." I closed my eyes. It started that way. But no, it's not just a fling anymore. We didn't say much after that. We didn't need to. When we returned Sunday evening, the house felt colder than I remembered. Paul had left the porch light on for me, bless his heart. He kissed me on the cheek and asked if I had fun with my sister. I said yes. I was getting better at lying. But I cried in the shower that night. Not from guilt. From confusion. From knowing I was standing with 1 foot in 2 lives and couldn't keep my balance much longer. The days that followed were harder than before. Jamie and I went back to stolen kisses, quick touches, but now, every time I looked at him, I didn't just see desire, I saw danger. I saw the life I might want, but didn't dare choose. Then came the dinner party. Paul invited a few friends over for wine and charcuterie on a Friday night. He was trying to connect, trying to be social again. He joked about how I was glowing lately and I wanted to disappear into the floor. And then, right in the middle of slicing baguettes, I heard the garage door. Jamie had come home early. I tried not to react, but something in my chest clenched. He entered through the back, wearing a worn navy t-shirt and jeans, looking freshly showered. casually lethal. My pulse throbbed. He froze when he saw the gathering. Hey! Paul waved him in. We're just having some snacks and wine. Come join us. Jamie's eyes met mine. Didn't realize we had company. We didn't, I said quickly. It was spontaneous. Well, he said slowly, I wouldn't want to intrude. Paul handed him a glass of Cabernet. Don't be silly. You live here. Jamie stepped in, nodded politely to the guests, and took a seat across the room from me. Not beside me, across, where he could see me clearly. And for the next hour, he watched me. He never touched me, never said anything suggestive. But the heat in his gaze seared right through my blouse. Every time I laughed at someone's joke, he smirked like he knew it was fake. Every time Paul refilled my glass, Jamie's jaw tightened. Later, when I was in the kitchen alone, stacking used plates, Jamie slipped in behind me. Nice show, he murmured in my ear. I spun to face him. Are you trying to get caught? Maybe I'm tired of hiding. I narrowed my eyes. Don't you dare do this here. He stepped closer. Do what? This, I hissed. This pressure. I know what I'm doing is wrong. You don't need to remind me with your brooding stares across a cheese platter. He tilted his head. You're the one who said you needed time. I'm giving you that. But don't pretend you don't feel it too. The cracks. I shoved a tray between us. Go back to the living room. But when he left, I stood there shaking. That night, after everyone left and Paul went to bed, Jamie and I ended up on the back porch. It was cool out, and I wrapped my arms around myself. He stood beside me, saying nothing. Finally, I broke the silence. I'm not ready. He nodded. I know. But I'm also not okay pretending this is just sex anymore. He turned toward me. Then what is it? I looked out at the dark yard. It's a mess. But it's mine. And I need time to untangle it before I make promises I can't keep. He took a deep breath. I'm not asking you to promise me anything tonight. Just don't shut the door on what we have. Please. I turned to face him, eyes full of heat and ache. I couldn't shut that door if I tried. He reached for my hand, gave it a squeeze, then walked away. Back inside, leaving me alone under the stars, my heart breaking open in a way I hadn't expected. The trouble with living a double life is that eventually you start to forget which one is the mask. I found myself brushing my hair a little slower in the mornings, looking at my reflection just a moment longer, wondering if I looked like a woman who was being unfaithful. I still cooked dinner every night. I still sent my boys the same "love you, Mom" texts. I still folded Paul's socks with care. But it was all muscle memory. I wasn't there anymore. Not completely. Jamie had started avoiding me around the house. I think it was his version of restraint. Or maybe punishment. He'd slip out early in the morning and return late, always just missing me.
It was safer that way.
For both of us. And yet it was unbearable. One night, I heard him moving around in the garage, long after Paul had gone to bed. I padded out barefoot in my robe, stood quietly by the door. The overhead light buzzed, casting his tall frame in shadows. He was sanding something, arms taut, shirtless. I watched him until he noticed me. You're not sleeping, he said without looking up. Neither are you. He turned off the sander, brushed sawdust from his chest. Didn't feel like being in my room. You mean your room down the hall in our house, I said. Let's not pretend this setup isn't insane. He gave me a tired smile. You're the one who let it happen. I didn't know what I was doing. You knew, he said gently. You just didn't expect to want me this badly. The truth of it sat heavy in the air. I hate this, I said. I hate sneaking around, lying to Paul, lying to myself. Jamie stepped closer. Then stop lying. It's not that simple. Yes, it is, he said. You love him or you don't. You want me or you don't. Everything else is just fear. I swallowed. You make it sound so clean. It's not. I built a life with Paul. A family. We have a history. But we have a now, Jamie said, eyes dark. And history can't hold you at night. It can't make your skin burn. I stared at him, every cell screaming with the need to close the space between us. You should have stayed away. But I didn't. And you didn't push me away, Diane. So don't put this all on me. He was right. We both knew it. I crossed the room slowly until I was close enough to smell the warm sawdust on his skin. My fingers brushed his chest, then moved higher, curling around his neck. Jamie, if I keep going, I'll break something I can't fix. He looked down at me, then break it. He kissed me, hard. Hands in my hair, mouth hungry. I melted into him, like I'd been holding my breath all week. There was no furniture in the garage except an old workbench, and that's where he lifted me, robe falling open, panties pushed aside, his jeans half undone.
We didn't speak.
We didn't have to. My legs wrapped around him, my fingers dug into his back, and I gave myself to him completely, recklessly, as if the world might end before morning. When we were finished, I sat there panting, legs still trembling, robe twisted beneath me, and stared at the wall like it could give me answers. Jamie kissed my shoulder, then rested his forehead against mine. You don't have to go back in. I do, I said quietly. He's still my husband. Jamie stepped back, jaw tight. For now. I started making mistakes. Small ones at first. I burned dinner one night because I was replaying something Jamie had whispered in my ear. I forgot Paul's dry cleaning. I left my phone unlocked and unattended on the kitchen counter. Paul noticed. Of course he did. He wasn't a fool. You okay? He asked one morning, buttering his toast. You've seemed a little distracted lately. I smiled too quickly. Just tired. Probably hormones. You know. He gave a sympathetic nod and changed the subject, but I saw it, the flicker of doubt behind his eyes. The quiet recalculation. He was starting to look at me like a puzzle piece that didn't fit anymore. That same week, Jamie didn't come home for 2 nights in a row. No call. No text. Nothing. I told myself not to panic. That he needed space. That maybe I needed it too. But the silence gnawed at me. On the 3rd night, I finally broke. I knocked on his door at midnight. He didn't answer. I opened it anyway. He was inside, lying on the bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. You vanished, I said. He didn't move. I was trying to be noble. That's a first. He gave a dry laugh. Didn't work. I sat beside him. Why does this feel harder now than it did at the start? Because at the start, we thought we could have our cake and eat it too. Now we're choking on the crumbs. I leaned back, closed my eyes. I'm so tired, Jamie. He rolled toward me, propped his head on his hand. Then stop running from what you want. I don't know what I want. Yes, you do. You're just scared to want it. I looked at him then, really looked. Say it. He didn't hesitate. I want you. All of you. Not just stolen nights and half whispers. I want to wake up with you. I want to make coffee with you in our kitchen. I want to take you out in public and not have to pretend we're something we're not. You want me to leave Paul. I want you to choose you. If that means leaving him, then yes. But more than anything, I want you to stop lying about the fact that you haven't been happy in years. That last part hit harder than it should have. Because it was true. I hadn't been happy in years. I'd been functional, present, loyal, but not alive. Not like this. Not the way Jamie made me feel, messy, vivid, awake.
He kissed me then.
Soft, unhurried, like he was waiting for me to shatter. And maybe I did. 2 weeks later, Paul asked me to sit down. It was a Saturday morning. Sunlight streamed in through the kitchen window, painting everything gold and warm. I was still in my robe, coffee halfway to my lips. He didn't waste time. Are you sleeping with him? The world stopped. I lowered the mug. My hands were shaking. Paul, don't lie to me. The silence between us stretched so long it became its own language. Yes, I said at last. I am. His eyes closed. Just for a second. Then he exhaled and opened them again. How long? Since spring. He nodded, like he'd already suspected as much. Maybe he had. Maybe I'd underestimated how much he could sense. Do you love him? I don't know. Do you love me? That question hurt the most. I don't know, I said again. And then, softer. Not the way I used to. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He just sat there, utterly still, as if trying to decide what part of his life to salvage first. I thought we were okay, he said quietly. I thought we were too, I whispered.
We didn't speak again that day.
Jamie found me later, sitting on the edge of the tub in the guest bathroom, eyes raw, face blotchy. I told him everything. He sat beside me, took my hand. You did the right thing. Then why do I feel like I just set fire to my life?
Because you did, he said.
But maybe that's what you needed. I turned to him, aching in every part of me. I don't know what comes next. I do, he said, and kissed me. The morning after everything came out, the house felt like a tomb. Paul had gone to stay at a hotel. He left without yelling, without taking anything but a duffel bag and a single look over his shoulder that will probably haunt me for the rest of my life. There was no grand fight.
No begging. No promises.
Just the sound of the door closing, like punctuation at the end of a long, unraveling sentence. I stayed at the kitchen table for what must have been hours. The coffee grew cold. The sunlight shifted across the tile. And inside me, everything was quiet. Not peaceful, just numb. Jamie didn't come in right away. Maybe he knew I needed time, or maybe he was afraid. When he finally did appear, his eyes were cautious, like someone stepping onto uncertain ice. He's gone, he asked. I nodded. Jamie stepped closer, slowly. Are you okay?
No, I said.
But I will be. I wasn't sure that was true, but it was what I needed to believe. For the first time in years, I woke up alone the next morning. No sound of Paul shaving in the bathroom.
No sleepy keys.
No muttered complaint about the news on the radio. Just the sound of birds outside and the soft hum of the ceiling fan above the bed. I rolled onto his side of the mattress. The imprint of his body was still faintly there. I laid my hand on it like it might still be warm. I didn't cry. Not that day. That would come later. Jamie made me breakfast. Scrambled eggs, burnt toast, and sliced peaches. He didn't talk much while we ate. He just looked at me like he didn't quite know where to start now that the fantasy had bled into real life. We cleaned up in silence. He dried the plates.
I washed.
Halfway through wiping the counter, I said it out loud. What if we ruined everything? Jamie didn't flinch. Maybe some things needed to be ruined. I looked at him then, and for a moment, I didn't see the man I'd been sneaking off with. I saw a man standing in the wreckage with me, holding out his hand. You still want this? I asked. He walked over slowly, wrapped his arms around my waist. I didn't go through hell to let you go now. I leaned into his chest, letting myself breathe for the first time in days. But as good as that embrace felt, the truth crept in around the edges. The truth that wanting someone doesn't always mean you're ready for the mess that follows. I didn't hear from Paul for almost a week. He texted our sons privately.
Checked in.
Didn't mention me. The boys were grown, both in their 30s, both living out of state. I wasn't naive. They'd find out eventually. If they hadn't already suspected. Still, I prayed Paul wouldn't tell them right away. I wasn't ready for that particular reckoning. Jamie tried to give me space, but space was a strange thing between us now. He was under the same roof. We bumped into each other constantly. In the hallway. In the laundry room. In the kitchen late at night, when neither of us could sleep. Sometimes we touched. Sometimes we didn't. Sometimes I let him hold me until I stopped shaking, and sometimes I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what the hell I had done. One night, I found him in the garage again.
No shirt.
Just jeans, sawdust on his forearms. I stood in the doorway. Are we making a mistake? He looked up slowly. You asked me that already. I know. But I need to ask again. He came toward me, wiped his hands on a rag. Does it feel like a mistake? Yes, I said. But not because of you. Because of me. Because I don't know how to not be someone's wife. You don't have to be anyone's wife, he said. You just have to be you. I laughed bitterly. I don't even know who that is anymore. He reached for my hand, tugged it gently. Then let's find out. Together. The first time we went out in public was a disaster. It was a Sunday. Brunch at a little cafe downtown. We drove separately, still too nervous to be seen getting out of the same car. We sat in a corner booth, ordered eggs and mimosas, tried to act like any other couple on a lazy weekend. But everything felt tight.
Forced.
I could see the looks, the sideways glances. Jamie was younger than me, and it showed. At one point, the waitress asked if he was my son. Jamie handled it with grace, laughed it off. I, on the other hand, nearly choked on my drink. We didn't speak for most of the ride home. Back at the house, Jamie finally broke the silence. So this is it, huh? This is how it's going to be. What do you mean? The stares, the awkwardness, the constant explaining. People thinking I'm some boy toy or you're having a midlife crisis. I crossed my arms. What did you expect? I don't know. Something better than this. I turned away, arms wrapped around myself. Maybe we don't work outside the bubble. Maybe this was only good in the shadows. He was quiet for a moment, then soft. Is that how you feel about me? A shadow thing? I didn't answer, because I didn't know. Because part of me did wonder whether we worked better when we were forbidden, when the danger was the glue. The next few weeks were a blur of logistics. Paul and I exchanged a few emails about the house. I agreed to buy him out. He didn't contest. He was moving into a condo near the lake. Said he needed quiet. A fresh start. We avoided anything personal. No, how are you, or do you still think about us? Just numbers, dates, bank account transfers. The day he came to collect the last of his things, I wasn't home. I couldn't be. Jamie was, though. I found out later they'd spoken. Briefly. Jamie didn't share what was said. Only that Paul looked tired, older than he remembered. That night, I cried for the first time. Real tears. Long and shaking. Jamie held me through it, didn't say a word. Just rubbed circles into my back until the sobs faded. I loved Paul. I probably still did. In that deep, settled way you love someone who's been part of your bones for half your life. But love wasn't always enough. And Jamie lit something in me I thought had burned out years ago. Still, love built on ashes isn't always clean. It carries the smell of what you burn to feel alive again. The first time Jamie told me he loved me, it was raining. We were on the porch. I was wearing one of his shirts barefoot, holding a glass of wine. He looked at me like I was the only thing in the world that made sense. I love you, he said. Not because of how we started, but in spite of it. I blinked. The words settled somewhere in my chest, warm and dangerous. I didn't say it back right away. Not because I didn't feel it, but because I wanted to be sure this wasn't just adrenaline and ruin. Later that night, when we were tangled in sheets, our limbs a mess of sweat and need, I touched his face and whispered it back. I love you too. It wasn't perfect. Nothing about this was. But it was real. And sometimes that's all you get. It took nearly 2 months before my sons called. At first, I told myself they were just busy. Then I began to suspect Paul had told them everything, and they were processing it in the way men do. Quietly, with clenched jaws and long silences. When my oldest, Alex, finally reached out, his voice was clipped. Civil, not warm. Dad says you're still living in the house. Yes. And Jamie's still there? I swallowed. Yes. He was quiet. So it's true. I didn't ask what exactly he meant by true. I just said yes again. There was another pause. Then, you know this is a lot, right? For all of us. I do. Dad's not doing great. My heart clenched. I know. We thought you two were solid. We thought you were solid. I could have defended myself. I could have said that marriages rot quietly, that love doesn't die in explosions but in slow leaks. I could have told him that for years I felt invisible, that I'd reached for Paul and found only the ghost of the man I married. But I didn't. He wasn't asking for reasons. He was asking for someone to blame. And I fit the part. So, I took it. I understand you're angry. I'm not angry, he said. I'm just disappointed. That word. It landed like a slap. After we hung up, I went out to the backyard and sat on the old swing. I must have been there an hour, staring at nothing. Jamie eventually joined me. Do they hate you? He asked gently. I didn't look at him. Not yet. But they don't see me the same. That's probably worse. He reached down, pushed the swing slowly, with the flat of his hand. Do you see yourself the same? I shook my head.
No.
But maybe that's not a bad thing. He sat beside me, close but not touching. We just sat there, two people in the middle of the wreckage, waiting to see what grew back. Summer turned to fall. The nights grew cooler. We put extra blankets on the bed. Jamie started building things again, not to escape, this time, but because it soothed him. I began volunteering at the community center downtown. Nothing dramatic. Just reading to seniors sorting pantry goods, walking with women who needed someone to listen. It helped. Doing something that didn't revolve around guilt. We were rebuilding slowly. But life after infidelity isn't a movie. There are no perfect montages of healing. It's clumsy, awkward. Some mornings I woke up and felt sure. Sure that I'd chosen what was right. That Jamie and I had something rare and worth holding on to. Other mornings I missed Paul with a sharp, almost physical ache. I missed the life we'd built. The easy rhythm. The way he used to bring me tea in bed on Sundays, or how he folded my sweaters just so. Jamie didn't fold sweaters. He left socks on the floor. Used too much hot sauce. He didn't know which mug was my favorite or how I liked the towel stacked. But he touched me like I was made of light. And he looked at me like I wasn't just a woman rebuilding her life. I was a woman he wanted in all her flaws and choices and aftermath. One evening in October, Jamie made dinner. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, something green that was more garnish than side dish. We ate on the back patio, wrapped in sweaters. Halfway through the meal, he cleared his throat. I want to talk about something. I looked up. Okay. I've been offered a job. My heart skipped. Where? Boise. I blinked. Idaho. He nodded. A friend runs a contracting company there. Said they're expanding. He wants me as lead foreman. How long would you be gone? He paused. It's not a contract job. It's permanent. The chicken grew cold on my plate. He reached across the table, took my hand. I want you to come with me. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. Leave this house? Leave the town I'd spent most of my adult life in? Leave my boys, my friends, the only familiar things I had left? But stay here, where every grocery trip felt like a walk through whispers. Where I passed neighbors who used to smile but now looked away. I don't know, I said honestly. Jamie nodded, let go of my hand. You don't have to decide tonight. That night, we made love without words. Slow and quiet. Our bodies knew something our minds hadn't caught up to yet, that this chapter was ending, one way or another. I waited 3 days before I told Paul. He came by to pick up mail. I offered coffee. He accepted. We sat at the same kitchen table where everything had come apart. I told him about Jamie's job.
About Boise.
About the offer. Paul listened without interrupting. When I finished, he looked at me and said, Do you love him? I nodded. Yes.
He sipped his coffee.
You always had a thing for fixing broken things. Except this time, it fixed you back. Tears welled, but I blinked them away. I didn't mean for this to happen. I know. We were quiet for a while. Then he stood, buttoned his coat. If you go, I hope you're happy. Not just excited. Not just in love. Happy. I hope you are too. He gave me a sad smile. I'll get there. And then he left for what might be the last time. I didn't decide right away. I needed time.
Space.
Jamie didn't pressure me. He packed slowly, deliberately, like a man hoping she'd show up at the last minute with her bags packed too. 2 weeks before his move date, I woke up early. The sun had just broken over the hills. The bedroom smelled like rain and fresh sheets. Jamie was still asleep beside me. I looked at him, really looked, at the faint scar on his jaw. The way he curled his hand under his pillow like a child. The furrow between his brows that never went away, even in rest. I slid out of bed, went to the closet, pulled down a suitcase, and started to pack. Not because I had all the answers, Not because I knew for sure what life in Boise would look like, but because I knew staying still wasn't healing me. Because sometimes love doesn't come wrapped in perfection. Sometimes it shows up in the wreckage, covered in sawdust and regret. And you either grab it or you don't. I was tired of not grabbing things. So I folded sweaters, found my favorite mug, wrote a short letter to each of my boys. Then I woke Jamie, kissed his shoulder, and whispered, "I'm coming with you." He rolled over, groggy and stunned. "Really?" I nodded. "Let's go build something that's ours from the beginning." And we did. Messily, loudly, lovingly. Because life doesn't end at 50. Sometimes, if you're brave enough, it finally begins.